I'm Shi Davidi, and you're listening to Red, White, and Blue Jays.
Swing and a drive.
Welcome to Red, White, and Blue Jays, the podcast home of Blue Jays Fans UK, a group connecting Blue Jays fans around the UK and beyond, and telling their story. And now, here's the host of Red, White, and Blue Jays, Steve Hunter.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Red, White, and Blue Jays, and a very warm, very early welcome to Shi Davidi, who joins us somewhere in Toronto in a swimming pool at some unearthly hour. Shi, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's great to see you. I just wonder, is this the first time you, because when I was doing a little bit of research, you've done a million podcasts with lots of different Blue Jays fans that I see. Have you ever done one into the UK? Have you gone overseas yet?
No, I think this is my first time speaking with a group of Blue Jays fans overseas. And it's great. It's really exciting, and it speaks to how popular this team is, that it's got a following in different spots across the world. So it's great to connect with a group who's definitely shown a lot of passion for the team, and certainly following from a distance.
Yeah, I mean, there are a massive amount of Jays fans here in the UK for all sorts of different reasons. I think a lot of it is vacations across to Canada, picked up on the team, which is certainly my story from the early 90s. But we've got obviously a lot of expats over here as well. So there's a real cross community in terms of Jays fans here. So I know that they're super excited about hearing from you today. So thanks so much for spending some time. Probably the best place to start is what's the mood like, or what has the mood been like down in spring training?
Well, it's been a very bizarre spring training, as you guys know, because of the lockout. And there's, early in camp, one of the really intriguing dynamics is that you almost had what was like, that winter meetings time frame, that sort of first couple of weeks of December happening concurrently with training camp. So guys are doing their routine, getting their work in, and then every day there's just a crazy amount of moves. And certainly the Blue Jays were part of that. Kikuchi comes in, Chapman comes in, and that gave camp a bit of a different sort of rhythm, and everyone was already playing catch up a little bit. Over time that's stabilized a little bit, but I still think there was a bit more of I don't want to say a stressed out or pressured posture, but everybody understood that there was a more limited time frame and that you didn't have the usual runway. So that definitely added a bit of a different flavor to camp.
Yeah. Do you think with this, I mean, for me, the CBA, I thought it would run a lot longer than it actually did. And it seemed to sort of turn a corner quite quickly. Do you think that caught a few people by surprise, that it turned around in those last few days relatively quickly?
I don't know if it caught people by surprise. I think, the way it played out that final week, the expectation was, well, when they had the meetings in Jupiter, Florida, I think the players at that point felt that there was still some distance and that there was still runway. They didn't really believe that Commissioner Rob Manfred was intent on canceling regular season games at that point. They didn't feel they had been at the deadline. That second week, when things collapsed on the international draft, that was really the time frame where the players really yo-yoed because, they thought, okay, we got to go, we got to get packed up, and then everything falls apart. And then once the dust had settled, I think both sides kind of had a few conversations with one another and said, we're too close to let this go. And so I think players were still on guard as a result of that. And then they realized, okay, this is a chance of getting done. So, but then there were points where, guys were talking amongst themselves, say, hey, I guess we'll go on vacation because it's going to be another month or whatever it was. So I don't think they were caught off guard, but I think they were prepared for it to go longer.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And I think obviously the international players took a little longer to get across and into spring training, but they all seem to have sort of caught up now with the rest of the gang. And I think by and large, obviously spring training results are always a bit of a mixed bag, aren't they, in terms of what do you actually read from that? How do you feel spring training has gone for the Jays thus far?
I think the key thing for the Jays is that no one suffered a serious injury, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's the one of the sayings that I've heard a lot over the years, that basically, like, nothing happens, nothing good happens, over those 6 weeks. Generally, you're just hoping that guys don't get hurt,
sure.
and as long as guys don't get injured, that's great. But by the same token, I do think that this spring has taken on a different meaning, just because everything is so compressed.
Yeah.
So the work that the players seem to be getting in, they're hearing good things about that. Obviously, everybody's optimistic at this time of year. The situation with Nate Pearson getting sick, that's certainly not ideal. Jordan Romano turning his ankle, obviously not ideal.
Walking a dog.
Ryan Baracki, right, walking a dog apparently. Ryan Baracki, obviously not ideal, but nothing calamitous has happened.
Yep.
And I think if you're a baseball team, you know that little things are going to occur, but you always worry about something more significant happening. And as we're talking this morning, the Blue Jays avoided that.
Yeah. Well, seeing the rain come down yesterday during the game, and I was thinking, how long are they going to last? Because it came down pretty heavy, but they were still cracking on. And then obviously the wise decision came in to call the game. And I think that is the big thing with injuries, isn't it? In terms of a healthy George Springer, what difference will that make for the Jays?
Massive. It's kind of interesting. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and the thought was, we're just talking about sort of how you look at replacing production on a team. And the person said to me, Matt Chapman on his own doesn't replace Marcus Semion's production, but a healthy George Springer, or George Springer for a full season, and Matt Chapman, that probably more than replaces Marcus Semion's production. And so, the fact that George Springer seems to be in a better place from a health perspective so far this spring, obviously really, really significant. When he was on the field and in good health, he was incredibly productive, incredibly dynamic, basically everything the Blue Jays had hoped for from him. And I think the Blue Jays, if they get 140 games out of him, they're going to be a much better team, because what he was over the 80 to 90 games he played last year was a force. So I certainly think they're banking on a fuller season from him being a big part of their improvement this year, and he really needs to be that in a lot of ways for them too.
Yeah, no, I think I'm thrilled to see him come back, and I think we only saw a glimmer of what difference he could make last year, and I think to get through spring training, as you say, fit and healthy and hit the ground running on Friday with a full healthy squad is going to be a tremendous asset to the Jays. In terms of Matt Chapman's arrival, obviously a lot of excitement about that. What difference will he make, particularly to Bo and Biggio or whoever plays at second, in terms of his defensive capability? How much better will they be as players because of his arrival?
I mean, it's a really great question, and I'm going to dig into some nerd stats with you here. So bear with me. But
go ahead.
If you look at collectively what the Blue Jays did from defensively at third base via outs above average, they were a -3, I believe, if memory serves right, on balls to the left side. So that's between the shortstop and the third baseman. Matt Chapman on his own last year in Oakland was a +5. So right there, you're looking at an 8 outs above average swing in terms of those balls. And so, the Blue Jays are now thinking about how differently they're going to deploy Bo Bichette. They can shade him more to the middle because he's not going to have to cheat to his right the way that he did last year. If he's shaded left a little bit more, then he's got an opportunity to gobble up more balls up across the infield. That's going to take some pressure off the second baseman. And if it's Kevin Biggio, I think it's just going to benefit simply by playing a position that he's comfortable at. I don't know that people really appreciated how tough it is trying to learn to play third base at the major league level on the fly, the way Kevin Biggio did last year. Yeah. He deserves a ton of credit for that. And, I don't think that he's necessarily gotten it. it's an incredibly difficult and demanding position. So, he's going to be better. Santiago Espinal will have some time at second base too. He's a tremendous defender.
Yeah.
So tighten up that entire infield makes a huge difference for a pitching staff. They got a lot of ground balls to the left side.
Yeah.
And any little margin, and I think that's where, when you look at where the Blue Jays were at last year, you're really looking and focus on the areas of small margin where you can tighten up the game. And, maybe it's that one ground ball that, defender gets to that changes an inning and allows a reliever to get through. And that equals 2-3 of those games that slipped away last year. And that's the difference, or could be the difference, between the postseason and a tough landing the way the Blue Jays had last year.
Yeah, no, I think as you look back, particularly last year, we always reflect here in the UK that it felt like a end of a football soccer season, with everybody ending on, same game, same points, going down to the last game. Who's going to go up? Who's going to go down in our terminology? And I think, as you say, if we can get some of those wins that we didn't get last year because we've added in somebody like Chapman. Just going back to SB, he's obviously, there was a lot of talk about him in terms of just how he looked like he put a little bit of weight on, bulked up over the off season. How much of a difference will that make in terms of his play and his capabilities, do you think?
Well, I think the prime difference potentially it could be is if it results in a little bit more power at the plate. And I think the Blue Jays have always thought as Espinal of somebody having the potential to hit for a little bit of power, primarily a gap to gap guy, but someone who could really get into one and hit a few home runs. He ups that a little bit, maybe he becomes a bit more of a significant factor. And, the one thing I would say about Espinal is that he's not someone necessarily who's overperformed, but he's someone who continues to make the most of every opportunity given to him. You think about the type of trade that he was acquired in. They picked him up from the Red Sox for Steve Pearce. There was some familiarity with Steve Sanders, who was with the Blue Jays at the time, and he was with Boston when they drafted Espinal. So there was a lot of familiarity there. He knew the player, he knew the work ethic and things of that nature. So it was a bit more of an educated lottery pick kind of acquisition than the usual one. But full credit to Espinal, because he's just continued to take advantage of every opportunity and force himself into more playing time. So, I think the plan at this point for him and Biggio is to job share the second base and, bounce around the diamond and fit into a number of different spots. But I can see Espinal, just because of the way that he's continually, forced his way into more playing time, maybe having a bit of a say of that, especially if he does experience a little bit of an uptick in power.
Yeah. Starting rotation, best in the AL East now?
I mean, it's tough to argue against it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you look at the Tampa Bay Rays, and you're always like, okay, that pitching staff top to bottom is formidable. But in terms of dependability and 1 through 5 and guys who can get deep into the game and with track records, you've got 2 of the top 5 pitchers in baseball last year in terms of innings pitched in your rotation, and Barrios and Gausman. Kikuchi has Steven Matz-esque upside, if not better than that. Of course, there's some downside too, which we saw in the second half with him last year. Alek Manoah is still progressing. As much as there's always consternation about him, he continues to just the Blue Jays. So I think from that standpoint, you look at the American League East teams, the Blue Jays probably have the most certainty or dependability in their rotation. It doesn't always turn out that way, as we know, but the Blue Jays have put themselves in a pretty good spot in terms of having a regular 5 who should be able to take the ball each turn that comes up and give that offense a reasonable chance to do its damage.
Yeah, and obviously with Nate Pearson out at the moment through illness, I understand. Where does he fit into this starting lineup? Do you see him shifting away from a starting pitcher to reliever, or was that too early to say at the moment?
I don't think the Blue Jays are ready to give up on that. I don't think Nate Pearson is ready to give up on that. And I don't think they should give up on that. The challenge is it's so many years now that he hasn't logged innings. It's tougher to start catching up on that workload. So, in an ideal world, I wonder if the Blue Jays try to use him, similarly to how the Rays used Luis Patino last year, where, he's in a few different roles. He comes in, he does some starting, he does some opening, he does some bulk work, he does some relief work. It's just sort of maybe, I don't think this term is fully accurate, but sort of a Swiss Army knife of pitching, where he's getting into a number of different roles and then still logging enough innings that you can maybe springboard him into a rotation next year. So I think there's going to be a lot of creativity with him. There's going to have to be, but this is also a big boy season, right? Like this is the time to use your resources or devote your resources to winning in any fashion possible. So if it comes to a situation where they need a dynamic 1-2 punch, or they need to give some depth to Jordan Romano in the bullpen and closing the games out, Nate Pearson kind of fits the bill. So, I do think that there are a number of scenarios the Blue Jays are going to be flexible to them. And ultimately, it's going to be driven both by sort of what his long-term developmental needs are, but also what the needs are in the moment, because of how important the season this is from leveraging the opportunity perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him come through. I think was it in the pandemic season, wasn't it, when he first broke through, and such high expectation, and it didn't quite go as planned. And then obviously you had Alec coming in last year, and his entry level or entry into the game was probably a little bit more solid than Nate's was. So I mean, I really like him. I'd love to see him featuring more heavily. I mean, I don't think he'll be, obviously, say, the starting five, but I wouldn't want him to shift away from that starting position and use him. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen with injuries and everything else that gets thrown in once you get into the regular season.
Sure. I mean, he's the key piece of that depth, Ross Stripling as well. But, I think that the difficult thing, but what you always think about with Nate Pearson is like the total package for him to be, one of the top pitchers in the game is there, right? So it's very tantalizing, and you don't want to turn away from that. But then you also have to take into account what's happened to him over the past 3 seasons, and that, you can't suddenly just throw him into the deep end and say, here, swim a marathon. That's not going to necessarily work either. And then you also know what a weapon he could be late in games for a team that's trying to win. Yep. So you've got sort of these several competing interests, and how you navigate through the different elements is going to be very tricky.
Yeah. So do they start with 3 catches or not?
I mean, I would expect that unless, some sort of trade materializes, and I wouldn't necessarily rule that out, but all things being equal, especially with expanded rosters, you're starting because, look, Alejandro Kirk is one of the 9 best hitters on that team, right? Yeah. He deserves to be in that lineup. At the same time, you don't want to give up on Reese McGuire, and he's out of options. And, as much as you may say, oh, you can always find a catch and throw guy, he knows the pitching staff. He's got some familiarity with them. You don't want to just sort of wash your hands of that asset. So, the Blue Jays essentially punt the decision for a month while they wait on things. And that would probably be the route that I would expect them to take. Yeah.
And of course, waiting in the wings down at Buffalo is a certain young man who's also knocking at the door. How do you see that one playing out over this particular season? Do you think he would be moved up at some point, or is that too early to say?
Yeah, my sense is that his path will be dictated by team need, right? I know some people who say that his bat is close to major league ready, if not major league ready at this point. Obviously, catching is a demanding position. He didn't get a ton of reps last year because of injury. So the Blue Jays are going to want to catch him up a little bit, but his bat is so good that we could see him force his way into the picture. So, partly it'll be determined by health. If something happens to Danny Jansen or Alejandro Kirk along the way, obviously that'll play a significant factor. And then, I think in the back pocket is the fact that, he played a little bit of third base. Could you find a way to work him in there and maybe get him once every 10 days at third base and a few days at catcher and some time at DH. And, I do think that if the bat does enough work there, that you could figure out something like that. But I do also believe the Blue Jays very much want him to spend some time in AAA, getting acclimated, making for lost time, and working on the defensive aspect of the game.
Yeah. Dexter Fowler was a side right move. I think lots of people reflecting that maybe 5 years ago that would make more sense. What's behind that one, do you think?
Just depth. There's no such thing as a bad minor league free agent signing, right? You bring him in, see what he's got. He could certainly be a good piece off the bench. And, the Blue Jays have some opportunity there right now. Greg Bird's getting some run, and, he might get a bit of a look. Nathan Lukes is someone who's gotten a look. But if Dexter Fowler has some good experience, smart baseball player, been around, has some connections to the team. If there's something left from him, then, why not, right? He can certainly play a role for you. And you have to also, it's been a while, but, you also have a guy who can play a little bit of center field, and things are a little bit thinner from a center field perspective now that Randall Grichuk is no longer on the club. So it can't hurt having him around. There are no promises, there are no guarantees, but if he's able to show that he's, past the injury that curtailed the season last year, and can still put the ball to the bat, still move pretty well on the bases, he absolutely has an opportunity to contribute to this club.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we saw last year in terms of just the dynamic in the dugout between all the players was this camaraderie that seemed to shine through. We reflected on this pod again about the home run jacket and all those sort of things that just brought a sense of a real joy to the team. And I'm guessing somebody who's been there, done it, has that experience, will help those younger guys coming through and bring some equilibrium across the squad.
Sure. I think you have to remember is that it's such a long season, and, so many different needs arise over the course of 6 months, and the everyday nature of it that, sometimes that perspective helps, right? You have another older voice, respected voice who's been around to maybe calm some frayed nerves, or, just provide a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of insight. That stuff's invaluable. The Blue Jays, a lot of them were going through it for the first time for 162 games, playing games of import with those kind of meanings. So, that was certainly a learning experience for them. More of them will have that to draw upon. But, the older I've gotten, the more that I believe, there's no substitute for experience. And when you can draw back on different things that have happened to you, or different moments that you faced, different conversations that you've had, sometimes you can make a contribution or rely on something that really gives you a little bit of comfort in a moment. And I would not be surprised if, Dexter Fowler, should he make this club at some point, could offer or can make that type of contribution to the players around him.
Yeah. Charlie Montoya just been awarded an extension to his contract. I think he's obviously had a fair amount of criticism over his tenure, but I'm thrilled for him, actually. I think it's just deserved. I think particularly over these last 2 seasons and how, as a whole club, they've managed the situation, particularly being out of Toronto. How do you think that's landing in terms of the Toronto fan base, Blue Jays fan base?
Well, I don't know. There's definitely a vociferous group on Twitter who was not pleased when I reported that on Friday morning. But I think you touched on a lot of the key points, right? Like the gong show that he's had to work his way through. And we focus on the last 2 years, but you have to remember he managed that 95 loss disaster in 2019. And as much as, people think, oh, it doesn't matter, it's a rebuild year. in a lot of ways, I think managers who survive those type of years are deserving of credit in a way that, sometimes winning clubs maybe aren't necessarily, maybe haven't earned in quite the same way, because, they had to deal with a lot through that time. Opener and a guy is a phrase that I keep coming back to, pointing to Sam Gaviglio as your MVP, and no disrespect to him, but, if you're looking at a mop-up guy as one of your key contributors, some things have very much gone wrong for you. So, it's what they went through the last couple of years and having success through that's full credit to the players first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
They could have made excuses, they could have, complained, they could have done all these different things, said why us, and we don't have to do this, and just pissed and moaned, and they did. They got after it, and they got and they put down really good performances. So that's a credit to them. But that Charlie Montoya is a part of that, and so the debate over in-game moves and things of that nature, the Blue Jays, like many clubs right now, they do a lot of that stuff by committee. They have a lot of stuff that's not necessarily scripted, but thought upon before games, and optimal matchups that they've searched for in different situations and researched at a very deep level, far deeper than fans typically do. That's all kind of playing into the decision making in game. So pinning that on him alone, I don't think is fair. And I think at times, like last year, what did you want him to do with the bullpen early in the season? Tyler Chatwood wasn't performing. That was one of his leverage guys. Rafael Dolis wasn't performing. That was one of his leverage guys. They tried Travis Bergen and Jeremy Beasley. And, when you're that far down, Anthony Castro, when you're that far down your depth chart, things are definitely not going right for you. And so, for someone who's had to make up a lot of things as he's gone along, far more than most, I think that he's underappreciated in some ways, and we'll get a real test of him this year where he's managing under normalcy and with a team that's supposed to win.
Yeah. And I think the contrast between him and Gibby obviously is huge in terms of just management style and personality and so on. So I think that's partly to play as well, because there's definitely some Gibby fans out there who's obviously sad to see him go, but also some people who weren't so keen. So it's one of those, I think. But I think for me, the reflection in terms of playing out of a suitcase for 2 seasons, or effectively 2 seasons, he's done as well as he could. Just thinking about coming back into Toronto, one of a question that Scott and Adam from the Walk Off Pod, who I know you know well, asked, what difference does a full season in Toronto mean in terms of extra wins? What does that look like for the Jays?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think if you wanted to sort of look at the home records last year, right, it was 25-11. I think I have my numbers right in Toronto, and they were 11-12 and 12-11 Dunedin and Buffalo. So, I think obviously it's tough to extrapolate that over, fully saying, okay, you're going to play at the same level, but there was a real tangible difference between playing at a major league facility, not having to deal with the constant questions. And it's not just, from their perspective, like, if you don't know where you're going to live in the next couple of months, whether consciously or not, like, that's going to cause you some stress. That's going to cause your family some stress. That's causing stress on everyone around you. And so, just simply having that and not having to worry about that, I think is, certainly going to free some people up. And some of this energy that was devoted to worrying about those different things, can now just be spent relaxing or thinking about swings or talking about baseball or thinking about how to, and sequence your pitches, whatever it may be. It's just more bandwidth for everyone to operate with, more comfort, a proper facility, actual support. I was talking to one player this spring, and was telling me about coming off the field after a game in Dunedin against the Rays and just getting absolutely ripped by these people yelling because they're Rays fans, and it's supposed to be a home game. And so it's demoralizing that not only it's not when you lose, but then, at a place where you're supposed to at least feel some benefits of support to get, just have a serenade of chirps all the way back into the clubhouse. That type of stuff took a toll on them, and they don't have to deal with that. They'll have full support. There's now, knock on wood, we'll hope it stays this way, but no capacity limits at the Dome. It's they're going to be like everybody else, and you've got a fan base that's super pumped about it. Like all those elements together, like how many extra wins does it equal? I mean, it's tough to measure that, but there is going to be a tangible difference from a mental perspective, and that'll probably translate into a couple extra percent here and there.
Yeah. What's the mood like in Toronto at the moment for them coming home?
There's been a lot of excitement, right? You can see it in, TV numbers for spring training games. You can see it in, the interest in what's going on, the discussion everywhere. Obviously, it's maybe a little bit different for me, but I'm having a ton of conversations with people about the club's chances this year. It's funny. I coach my younger son's hockey team, and we played for the championship yesterday. And right after the game, a couple of players on our team, we're like, "Hey, what do you got on this? And who's going to do this?" And so even in environments where it may be a different sport first, the Blue Jays are still top of mind for people. So I think that's really telling you about how this team's captures imagination. Oh, another little thing that I just picked up yesterday, actually. I was talking with a minor baseball league here, youth baseball league, and they're completely filled for the summer, and their registration is up 30% year over year, which they attribute to its interest in the Blue Jays. So it's great to see on a number of different levels, and anecdotally at least I can tell you that it's maybe higher than it's been since the 15 or 16 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, obviously those were the most recent big years in terms of fan base and so on, and I guess me looking into Canada, being there several times, the fight for fans in terms of hockey, baseball, basketball, where does the Jays fit into that arena? Because there's obviously clearly, I would imagine, perhaps more Maple Leafs fans generally. Would that be a fair assessment because hockey is so big in Canada?
Yeah, and the Maple Leafs are such an institution, and they've obviously gotten almost a century start over the other clubs. So they're definitely embedded. But look, I think the Jays have a national pull that, the Maple Leafs have a national pull too, because Torontonians are all over the country. But I do think the Jays have a national pull that's different, right? Because it's not, if you're a Leafs fan in Vancouver, for instance, like, you don't feel good about it, right? The Canucks fans there are going to be on you. But you can be a Jays fan in Vancouver, you can be a Jays fan in Montreal, you can be a Jays fan in Calgary, you can be a Jays fan in Edmonton and Ottawa without any issues, right? You've got a legitimate national pull. The Raptors certainly built that to some extent as well. And obviously they've got and have earned and well-deserved a strong following. I don't know that it'd be easy to sort of track them. I guess if you're going to look at sort of TV numbers, you definitely say the Jays are ahead, maybe behind only the Leafs. But, there are strong pulls across the board for all three franchises, all well-deserved. But, I do think right now the people see the opportunity that the Blue Jays have. They see the roster and the talent that they have. They've got some engaging, illuminating stars that are attractive. So, they're really they really have a significant opportunity before them to not just obviously win and make some money this year, but also to cement a new generation of followers that will carry them through over an extended period.
Yeah. Can they do it this year?
I mean, they have every reason to believe that they should, right? I think you could look at them. I think Fangraphs right now has them as projecting as the best team in the American League East. Never sleep on the Tampa Bay Rays. So,
Right.
They always seem to find a way. It's the Blue Jays kryptonite too. So I think there's some demons there they'd like to slay. The Yankees have some flaws, but they're good. The Red Sox have some flaws, and they're good. It's a tough league, but there's an extra playoff spot. They should absolutely be in the postseason. They should probably win the division. Weird things happen, so nothing's guaranteed. 2013 they were supposed to win the World Series. You remember how that turned out?
Yeah.
They definitely should have gotten to the World Series in 2015 as well. They were the best team that year and weren't able to get there. But they have the opportunity to do it this year. They have the talent, they have the depth, and it's just a matter of getting it done. Everybody doing what they're supposed to do.
Sure. Shai, I'm conscious of time, and I need to let you go. Just one final question, which perhaps reflects more in terms of our scene here in the UK. How much would a ball club be aware of an international following? Obviously, we had one London series with the Yankees and the Red Sox came over in 2019, and then the pandemic year, of course, cancelled the next one. MLB have just released some dates in terms of MLB games, not just here in the UK, but across the world. How much of a knowledge would players be aware of the following of a team overseas?
I think the players, they'll see it on social, they'll hear about it, they understand. The Blue Jays do a pretty good job of making them understand sort of where their reach is, because the Blue Jays are trying to engage all the different fan bases. As part of the CBA games that you mentioned, the Blue Jays, I would not be surprised to see the Blue Jays pursue one of those games in England.
Come on.
I think they're going to try, and I don't, obviously not guaranteed, but I do think they're interested. They had interest in the past. There's obviously the natural connection between, Canada and England. And so I would not be surprised if they're one of the teams that end up there. Obviously there's some other politics that go into the play, so nothing's guaranteed, but I think the Blue Jays are going to be in one of the international games, and I would think that they would target England for the reasons I just mentioned. So whether or not that happens, we'll see. But they're definitely conscious of it, and I think it'd be pretty fascinating for them to come play overseas and see that they already see their reach. When they go to every ballpark in the American League, National League too. The Blue Jays visit. There's always a contingent of fans. Torontonians and Canadians are everywhere in North America, and certainly in certain pockets, Canadians invade the visiting stadiums, and seeing it internationally too would not be a surprise either.
Oh, we'd love it. I think when we went to the 2019 series, obviously there's a whole bunch of Red Sox and Yankees fans there, and just about every ballpark, every ball club was represented by a fan somewhere. But I think most people would say beyond the Red Sox and Yankees, the Jays were the next most well-represented club at that game or that series. So I think, there is a massive following here, and everybody would love to see the Jays come to London. I think my sort of question mark would be whether it would pull the audience in the States well, for an international series. But that aside, there will be a whole load of us that would very warmly welcome them.
Yeah, well, I think there's the TV number and the TV audience in the States to think about, but there's also, what's the local connection there, what's going to sort of engage most fans. And, you're thinking about, you're going to have an international series, like it would make sense to have the one international ball club in the major leagues participating in. And, I do think we'll see probably the vast majority of clubs spread out across both the international games and the marquee games that Major League Baseball is going to be putting together as part of the CBA. But the impression that I've gotten is that the Blue Jays believe they'd be a good fit for one of the London games.
Well, if it happens, Shai, you'll be very welcome. We'd love to see you and see you on our home patch. But thank you so much for giving up your very early morning. I really appreciate you being able to find some time just to chat to us. And I know loads of the guys here will love to just hear what you've brought today. So thank you.
I appreciate you having me, and hopefully the Blue Jays do get to cross the pond, and hopefully I'm fortunate enough to do that trip if it happens. So,
Yeah.
Appreciate the conversation. Have a great day.
Yeah. Cheers, Shai. Take care. Bye-bye.
The Red, White, and Blue Jays podcast is a production of Blue Jays Fans UK. If you've got a Blue Jays story to share, let us know. Email us at bluejaysfansuk@gmail.com. And follow along on Twitter and Instagram at Blue Jays Fans UK. I'm your announcer, Jim Langton. Thanks for listening.